Imagine that from the moment divinity has the intention to manifest itself as consciousness, everything after that intention is made up of webbing-like structures. These structures densify all the way down through creation, first forming the ego, then densifying further through the 10th dimensions, until they create everything you know as creation, from the air you breathe, to your organs, to your coffee table, to your toenails. This webbing, once it's densified enough, we call vital webbing in vortex healing terminology. There is actually a beautiful parallel here in physics. Einstein spent the last 3 decades of his life chasing what he called a unified field theory, trying to show that gravity and electromagnetism weren't two separate forces at all, but expressions of one single unified field. He never finished it. He died still reaching for it. But the impulse behind that search, the sense that everything we experience as separate is actually one field, expressing itself in different ways, that's not so far from what we are about to talk about. This vital webbing becomes the very architecture of your energy system and your consciousness. It then gets conditioned by other sources, your genetics, your issues, but it also becomes a source of conditioning for all those other things in return. Sounds complicated? It is. Stick with me and we'll unpack it together. Today's episode is about understanding the human energy system and consciousness. To get there, we have to start at the origin of creation. But first, let's define what I mean by energy system. Picture your physical body as a complicated mechanism of different energetic dynamics operating across multiple levels. The energy system is conditioned, imprinted really, on almost every part of it. So, we are not just a pure flow of energy moving in perfect harmony through your day. That imprinting can be simple or it can evolve into something far more complicated. We'll get to that. This webbing holds the blueprint of creation within itself while simultaneously manifesting it, holding the very concept of space and time. Everything in creation, including our familiar four-dimensional experience of space and time, is made of this vital webbing. Anything you experience as form, your favorite mug, the table in front of you, is this webbing. Through your navel is where you connect deeper into what Einstein called the unified field. All of your body's vital webbing comes together there, in your navel. This vital webbing, although its design ultimately comes from the source of all creation, is generated from consciousness and also from something called divine webbing. So, we have vital webbing and divine webbing. We'll also call these divine lines and vital lines, and when we are referring to both together, we'll call it web of life. You don't need to remember the terminology. This is all vortex healing language. Just try to grasp the concept. And if it resonates, you can always go and sign up to a vortex healing class and learn it properly from a teacher. Back to divine webbing. It differs from vital webbing because it isn't rooted in consciousness or in creation. It transcends time and space entirely. It comes directly from divine intention and is the vehicle that carries the manifestation of divine intention and divine energy. So, going back to the beginning, divine webbing, following divine intention, makes vital webbing. And as that vital webbing densifies on its way down through the 10th dimensions, divine webbing fits it with life and energy and bridges divine intention into it, orchestrating creation. The universe is structured, densified consciousness, sewn together by divine webbing, which carries the intention and energy to do it. That's far more to say about the makeup of vital webbing across different dimensions, but for our purpose today, that covers the foundation. Again, a class will teach you the rest. Out of all the vital webbing in our human body, you also have 11 divine lines feeding intention and energy through it. One for each of your 6 main chakras, one through each hand, and one through each foot, and one large one running through your spine. If you had a broken divine line and you come in for a vortex healing session, fixing that line, which takes only seconds, will be the single most important thing that happens in the entire healing. I remember a story that my teacher told us in class once. He'd seen a documentary about a woman with a personality disorder, 10 different personalities living in one body. She'd eat a whole pizza, fall asleep, wake up with no memory of eating it, and then order another one. By the end, she had 5 empty pizza boxes and no idea who'd eaten any of it. My teacher said that looking at her, every single one of her divine lines was broken. It isn't easy to break a divine line, but it's possible through severe trauma, for instance. So now we have our foundation, the origin, what creation is made of. From here, we can move into understanding the human energy system properly. But creation, as we experience it, isn't simply what happens, it's perceived, distorted really, through the lens of separation, our personal issues, and everything else conditioning us. Fundamentally, your deepest conditioning is the experience of separateness, of being a separate self, a separate I, a separate me and mine. This generates specific issues in us. We talk about 2 main categories: direct sources of conditioning and indirect sources of conditioning. Direct conditioning is the simplest to picture. Think of all your present life experience, say a child who grew up surrounded by violence. That experience creates an energetic imprint in their consciousness, body, and energy system, alongside with the emotional and psychological reaction. Indirect conditioning is about how we interact with the world around us, how we train ourselves to be in relation to other people. Our energy system is the vehicle through which we express our karmic conditioning, or simply we can call it karma, our millions of past lives worth of history. That's your incarnational personality. Go listen to the karma episode or we'll be here all night. Your incarnational personality sits in your karmic body, in the spine, and imprints your energy system from there. Then there is an ancestral history carried in your genetics, which actually begins at the moment of conception. The sperm carries conditioned genetic information and a conditioned package of vital webbing, meeting an overconditioned package in the egg. Add to that your current life history, plus the higher dimensional maps that keeps us on our karmic path. We call those transcendental influences. Your energy system is the vehicle expressing all of it. And because we are identified with it, all of the karmic material reinforces our sense of identity, our separation, the story we tell ourselves about who we are. At the beginning of your present incarnation, you carry a package, basically your karmic mind and your incarnational body. That's how we call them in vortex healing. But they're holding everything you have experienced across past lives, everything that's impacted your incarnational consciousness. When you come back into incarnation, that stored information conditions and imprints your new body, energy system, and consciousness, memory included, giving rise to your issues. We carry both a body and a mind that have traveled with us across lifetimes. We call this incarnational body and karmic mind. The incarnational body is the vehicle that carries us from one life to the next, made of vital webbing. The karmic mind is its consciousness, holding our karmic issues, our attitudes, our positionalities, all of our past life history and memory from which our current life experience gets generated. So everything you have experienced in past lives impacts both of these. When you reincarnate, this whole package, your karmic mind and your incarnational body together, known as incarnational personality, comes through into the spine and expresses through the karmic body, which is one of our 8 energetic bodies. Let's talk now about energetic bodies. One important aspect of the energy system is the energetic bodies. We have 8: the astral, etheric, karmic, emotional, spiritual, mental, plus the nervous system has its own energetic body, and so does the digestive system. Rather than stacking on top of each other like layers of an onion, these arise alongside the physical body in the womb, coexisting simultaneously, each vibrating at a different level. The karmic body, although, is the exception. It sits in the spine and arises around the third month of pregnancy, which is when a fully incarnated baby is energetically actually formed. These bodies can get distorted in size and shape according to emotional memory, and so can the substance they're made of, a kind of energetic tissue that then gives memory to the physical tissue of your body, storing emotional information, including past life information. Each energetic body interacts with life directly. You can picture each one storing a particular kind of consciousness that generates a particular experience. The mental body stores mind consciousness, giving you your mental headspace. The spiritual body stores consciousness related to your spirituality, and so generates your experience of it. The nervous system energetic body and the digestive system energetic body link directly to their corresponding physical system. And the astral body, that's the one you access only when you sleep. It becomes your vehicle into the astral realm and into dreaming, where you interact with beings, some of whom you recognize from waking life, entities, and some that simply inhabit that realm. Each energetic body expresses its own field, and that field interacts with the fields of the other bodies and with life directly. It's the technical underpinning of that phrase, everything is connected. Now, a very important part of your energy system is your physical body itself, the densest layer. It holds and expresses conditioning both on the genetic DNA and its tissue. Everything conditioning your energetic bodies eventually shows up in your physical body too. A huge source of that conditioning is your genetic history carried in DNA. So your personal incarnational history merges with your genetic karmic history at the level of local consciousness. Part of that merging gets absorbed into the structure of the DNA itself, forming a unified genetic makeup carrying your karmic history, this life, past lives, and your ancestors, which, by the way, also had a hell lot of past lives. It also contains epigenetic imprints and a core survival program, which in vortex healing we call it genetic core veil. A vortex healer working at a high enough level can clear the karmic imprints on your DNA, so this life, past lives, ancestral lines, and also the epigenetics from both mother and father in a handful of sessions. Our physical body, this beautiful and absurdly complex machine, runs on our organs. But did you know your energy system feeds those organs directly? There is a living, ongoing conversation between your energetic anatomy and your physical anatomy happening constantly. Your organs aren't just biological machinery doing their chemistry in isolation. They're energy structures. They vibrate, they hold frequency, they hold emotions. This isn't a new idea dreamed up in the wellness world over the past 20 years. It's ancient. Traditions across the world, with no contact with each other, arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion. So, let's travel a little. I want to walk you through a few of these traditions, then bring it home to what it actually means for your healing. Let's start from traditional Chinese medicine. The oldest and most detailed map of the organ-emotion relationship comes from traditional Chinese medicine, refined over the last 3,000 years. In TCM, every major organ is an organ system, a Zhang Fu, and each one presides over a specific emotional landscape. There's a direct correspondence between what an organ does physiologically and what it governs energetically. Let's start from the liver. As the word implies, no liver, no life. I learned this from Dr. House, by the way. In Western medicine, we think of the liver as the detox organ. In TCM, it's that, but more. It governs the smooth flow of qi, of life force, through the entire body. When that flow moves freely, we feel expansive, creative, able to plan and dream and move forward with direction. The healthy emotional signature of the liver is something like benevolence and open-hearted engagement with life. But when the liver is congested, through stress, repressed feelings, a life that demands we suppress who we are, the signature becomes anger, frustration, resentment, the feeling of being trapped, unable to move. Traditional Chinese medicine calls the heart the emperor of all organs, the Shen, Spirit or consciousness resides there. It's the home of our awareness, our capacity for joy, our ability to connect. A vibrant open heart expresses love and clarity, a sense of being truly present in your own life. When the heart is disturbed by shock, by grief, by years of unmet longing, the Shen scatters. This shows up as anxiety, an ability to be present, a kind of restless searching. TCM links heart disturbance to what we now call dissociation, that sense of not quite being in your own life. Sounds familiar? Think about what we now understand about how trauma fragments the nervous system sense of self. The kidneys, what TCM considers our most fundamental resource, Jing, our constitutional essence, the deep reservoir of vitality we are born with. The kidneys are tied to ancestral inheritance, to the deep past, to our basic will to live. Their emotional correspondence, it's fear. Raw, primal, existential fear. When life asks too much of us for too long, the kidneys weaken and fear arises. So, live in chronic fear and you deplete the kidneys in return. You can see this in people who've lived through sustained trauma or burnout, bone deep exhaustion. That's qualitatively different from ordinary tiredness. Also, the kidneys feed energy to every cell of the body. Traditional Chinese medicine will say that's the kidney speaking. The lungs are associated with grief, with the ache of separation and loss. The lungs also govern Po, the corporeal soul, the part of us most intimately tied to physical incarnation, to breath, to the boundary between self and the world. Unexpressed grief settles in the lungs. We see this physically too. Grief collapses the chest, and chronic grief can suppress immunity, making us vulnerable to respiratory illness. The spleen and the stomach, this old worry, overthinking, that circular rumination that never quite resolves. Fittingly, the spleen and the stomach govern digestion, not only of foods, but in TCM terms, of information and experience. When we can't digest what happened to us, then we can't process and integrate it. Let's cross from China to India, to Ayurveda, at least 5,000 years ago, with its own profound map of the body-emotion relationship. In Ayurveda, the body is understood through three fundamental forces, the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, each with its own emotional signature and its own way of falling out of balance. What's particularly interesting here is how Ayurveda understands the heart. The Hridaya is considered the seat of consciousness, the meeting place of body, mind, and spirit. It's where Ojas resides, the subtle essence representing our deepest vitality, our immunity, our radiance. Ojas is directly affected by emotional state. Chronic stress, ongoing fear, suppressed grief, emotional shock, all of these depleted. You become less luminous, less resilient, less able to meet life. Ayurveda also speaks of prana, the life force moving through us, and how emotional disturbance disrupts its flow through the body's channels, the Nadis. The solar plexus region, tied in Ayurveda to fire and transformation, becomes the seat for anger, perfectionism, the burning driven energy that, taken too far, turns to inflammation in both body and psyche, and grief in Ayurveda settles in the lungs and large intestine. What we can't let go of emotionally shows up in the organ, literally designed to release. If we look further into shamanic traditions found across indigenous cultures on every continent, we find this same essential understanding in a different language entirely. In many shamanic cosmologies, illness begins in spirit before it descends into the body. An emotional wound, a soul wound, in who we are, that's the root, and the organs become the place where those wounds take up residence. The shaman's work is with the underlying spiritual cause. Many shamanic traditions also speak of soul loss, the way trauma, especially shock or profound loss, can cause part of the soul to fragment away and leave, protecting the world from something unbearable. That fragmentation shows up in the organs and the energy body, and over time, if unaddressed, it can translate into physical illness. This maps remarkably onto what modern psychology now understands about disassociation and trauma. We can't talk about the energy system and the organs without the chakra system from the Vedic tradition. One of the most complete maps we have of the relationship between energy, emotion, and physical health. Each chakra corresponds to a specific area of the body, a specific nerve plexus, specific organ, and a specific domain of psychological experience. Manipura, the solar plexus chakra, governs the stomach, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder. Its domain is personal power, self-worth, will, and identity. Disturbed by shame, by chronic criticism, by situations that demand you to make yourself small, it holds the wound, and the organs in the region begin carrying its frequency. The heart chakra governs the heart, lungs, thymus gland. It is the domain for love, grief, compassion, and connection. Every loss never fully felt, every love never fully expressed, every time your heart had to close to survive, that lives in the energetic heart center. In traditional Chinese medicine terms, it lives in the heart and lungs too. The throat chakra governs the thyroid, the neck, and the voice. Its domain is truth and authentic expression. How many of us were told, one way or another, that our truth wasn't welcome? That we were too much, too sensitive, too loud, too strange? That wounding lives in the throat, the thyroid, the muscles of the neck, and the jaw. Shadhisthana, the sacral chakra, governs the reproductive organs, the kidneys, the lower abdomen. Its domain is creativity, pleasure, flow, right to feel. And here we find a wound of shame around desire, around the body, around our capacity to simply be sensuous, embodied human beings. Your chakras radiate through the spine, moving in one direction towards the front of the body, and the opposite direction towards the back, with the deepest point being the interface at the spine itself. Most of the activity happens in the front. The back stabilizes the harmony of the chakras. Simply put, chakras are centers of energy and consciousness. The beautiful spinning color image we usually see in the picture isn't quite how they actually look because of everything we carry on them. Our issues sit like lens, if you wish, over each chakra. You can clear your chakras all you want, but until you work on your issues underneath, that lens keeps disturbing how you perceive and interact with the world, including your relationship, my friend. So, the organ doesn't separate emotional from physical, it holds them as one. What you feel becomes where you feel it. This is not cause of alarm, it's cause for compassion. For yourself and for everyone you have ever met, carrying more than anyone could see on the surface. And it's a doorway because if emotional experience can move into the body and settle into the organs, the energy field, and eventually the physical structure, the reverse is also true. Energy work that reaches deep enough into those layers of holding can free what's been locked there. A very important part of your energy system is the energy pathways. Most people have heard of the Meridian system from Chinese medicine. Meridians are energy pathways, but we're not alone in the game. We spoke about the vital webbing constructing your physical body. Within that vast invisible fabric are specific systems. The Meridian pathways, the Jin Shin pathways, the Viridian pathways, and the Nadis. I want to sit with that word, pathways, not centers, not pools, pathways, movement, flow. These are living currents constantly circulating, constantly delivering something essential to every part of you. When that movement is interrupted, congested, depleted, blocked, that's when we begin to feel it. The Meridian system comes from traditional Chinese medicine, and it's one of the oldest and most detailed maps of the energy body humanity has produced, observed, and refined for the last 3,000 years, while Western medicine was still centuries from understanding blood circulation. Running through the body like an extraordinarily precise irrigation system are channels. The Jin law, which we translate as meridians. 12 primary meridians, organized, paired, following specific trajectories, each tied to a specific organ system, time of the day, element, and range of experience. The 12 corresponds to the 12 major organ system: lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen, heart, small intestine, bladder, kidney, pericardium, which governs the energetic protection around the heart, triple wormer, gallbladder, and liver. These meridians don't stay local to the organs. The lung meridian doesn't just run through your chest. It travels down the arm to the thumb. The kidney meridians begin at the sole of the foot and travels up all the way to the inner leg, through the abdomen to the collarbone. The bladder meridian, which is the longest in the body, runs from the inner corner of the eye over to the skull, down to the back in the two lines alongside the spine, through the buttocks, down the leg, around the outer ankle, and it finishes at the little toe. Why does this even matter? Because a point on your little toe, it's an energetic communication with your eye, your skull, your spine, your bladder. The body isn't a collection of isolated parts. It's a continuous circuit. Within these meridians flows chi, life force, the animating intelligence of the body. Whether it's abundant or deficient, flowing freely or stagnant, moving correctly or reversed, determines so much about our experience of health on every level. There are also 8 extraordinary vessels called the Qi Jing Ba Mai, functioning differently from the 12 primary meridians. If the meridians are rivers, these are the reservoirs, deep underground lakes. When the primary meridians overflow, the vessels absorb the excess. When depleted, the vessels release the reserves. Those are the great balancers of the system. 2 are particularly significant. The governing vessels, it governs the yang meridians, active, outward, structural energy. The conception vessel, governing the yin meridians, nourishing, receptive, interior energy. Together, they form a continuous loop up the back and down to the front, understood in various spiritual traditions as central to vitality and the awakening of consciousness. Along these meridians sit the acupoints, over 360 on the primary meridians alone, each named, each with a function, mapped with precision because sensitive practitioners over millennia notice something happening at these exact locations. What is fascinating here is what modern science has found. Acupoints have measurably different electrical properties from surrounding tissues, lower electrical resistance, higher concentrations of gap junction, the structure that lets cells communicate directly. Science doesn't have a full explanation for the meridian system, but it's also no longer dismissing it either. Jin Shin Jyutsu gives us something different. If the meridian system is a detailed straight atlas, Jin Shin is a view from space. Practitioners refer to the meridian system as the manifested system, and Jin Shin as the manifesting system. Stick around and you'll see why. Jin Shin Jyutsu is an ancient Japanese healing art. Its name translates roughly as the art of the creator through the person of knowing and compassion. Not a technique, not a clinical intervention, an art rooted in a quality of being rather than anything mechanically done to the recipient. Its origins trace back beyond writing, appearing in the Sanskrit text and in Japanese Kojiki text dated around 712 AD. Its modern transmission began with Jiro Murai, a Japanese man in the early 20th century who was gravely terminally ill by medical standards. He had his family carrying him to a mountain cabin and leave him alone for 7 days. There, in that solitude, he worked on his own body using ancient hands position, mudra-like holds, and he recovered completely. He devoted the rest of his life to understanding and teaching what had healed him, finding it again in ancient texts and systematizing it. He taught it to Mary Burmeister, who'd come to Japan as a translator after the Second World War. She brought it to America, began teaching it in the 1960s, and wrote the foundational text most Western practitioners still study today. In Jin Shin Jyutsu, the energy body contains 26 points, not hundreds like in the Chinese medicine, but 26. Safety energy locks. That name matters under stress, under emotional or physical overwhelm, under the accumulation of tension and unexpressed experience. These points lock down to protect the system, but when multiple locks close, the flow through the pathways gets compromised. The 26 are one on each side, 52 in total. Each has a number, a location, a specific function. Lock 1 on the inner knee relates to new beginnings, creation, emergence. Lock 13 on the thoracic region is sometimes called the love of life lock. Our fundamental will to be here, our relationship to incarnation itself. Lock 26, near the shoulder, is called the director, a master point that can move energy through the whole system where everything else feels stuck. The work itself happens through the hands, so you can actually try this yourself. Both hands resting gently on specific combinations of locks simultaneously, creating a living circuit. You're not pressing, not manipulating tissue. You're simply resting your hands there with presence and intention, letting your own current act as a jumper cable, completing what was interrupted, inviting the flow to resume. The flows in Jin Shin, the main central flow, the supervisor flow, the mediator flow, plus 26 individual flow patterns tied to each lock, are organized differently from the meridians. The main central flow is the most fundamental of all, running along the body's midline, deep within it, from the crown of the head down to the base of the trunk. This is the source flow, the primary channel of universal energy nourishing everything else. Working with it is like resetting the whole system from the root. What I love most about the Jin Shin is how accessible it is. Mary Burmeister wrote self-help books, simple guides to holding your own locks, running the flow on yourself. The body can heal itself when the pathway is reopened and the flow is restored. We are not passive recipients of healing. We are participants in it. Each finger ties to a specific organ system and emotion. So grab your fingers. We're going to go through each one. Thumb, stomach and spleen, worry. Index finger, kidneys and bladder, fear. Middle finger, liver and gallbladder, anger. Well, that's easy enough to remember. Ring finger, lungs and large intestine, grief and sadness. Little finger, heart and small intestine, anxiety, trying too hard. So, if you're sitting somewhere, a waiting room, a train, a moment that feels just too much, or watching TV, you can simply hold the relevant finger, wrap your opposite hand around it gently, breathe. That's Jin Shin. You are working with the energy pathways, communicating with your organ system, telling your body quietly that it's safe, that the current can flow again. You can also just go through each fingers if you forget which finger is which. And also this is very, very good when you are integrating an energy healing session. Vortex healing works on these energy pathways very deeply, clearing them, optimizing them, energizing and strengthening them, but also clearing conditioning out of them and rebuilding where needed. Advanced practitioners can reopen shut down acupoints or a Jin Shin node, subnode, or micronode. One thing I noticed, most people doing healing work focus heavily on clearing issues. Understandably, you want to get rid of them and it's important work. But If you're a vortex healer listening right now, let me ask you, when was the last time you sat down and cleared your meridians? I'm not gonna answer them myself, if I'm honest. Maybe we can do our own works together. So, you just heard a strange word fly past. Meridians. The Meridian system is a pathway system discovered by Rick Wayman, founder and lineage holder of vortex healing. It feeds the organs directly, all the way down on the cellular level, much like the meridians, but it's an independent system, more localized, like mini meridians across specific organs. It interfaces with the meridian systems at what we call junctions. And then there are the Nadis. The Nadis system comes from the ancient Vedic tradition in India, and it is very vast. The classical text speaks of 72,000 nadis running through the energy body, 72,000 individual channels threading through every part of your being like an invisible nervous system. And that comparison is exactly right. The nadis aren't the energetic body of your nervous system. Your physical nervous system has the dimension your neurologists can measure: neuron, axons, synapses, the branching network running from brain to fingertip. But that's not the whole picture. There is an energetic counterpart underlying it, informing it, in many ways preceding it. That's the Nadi system, your energetic nervous system. Just as your physical nervous system has a central channel, the spinal cord, the Nadi system has 3 primary channels considered most fundamental of all 72,000. The central channel is the Sushumna, running along the midline from the base of the spine to the crown, the great central highway, the axis of the whole system. Weaving around it, a double helix, are 2 further nadis: Ida, flowing on the left, feminine, cooling, lunar, receptive, governing the left side of the body and the right hemisphere of the brain. Pingala, on the right, masculine, eating, solar, active, governing the right side of the body and the left hemisphere. These are the master channels. Everything else in the Nadi system branches from them, the way every peripheral nerve ultimately traces back to the spinal cord and brain. Where Ida and Pingala cross, winding around Sushumna, those crossing points are the chakras. The energy centers are literally created at the intersection of these channels, meaning the chakras aren't separate from the Nadi system, they are generated by it. Nodes of intensified energy where the major flow converges. When Ida and Pindala are balanced, when the solar and the lunar, active and receptive, are flowing in harmony, Sushumna opens. And when it opens, something becomes possible that it isn't accessible otherwise. Energy can move through the central channel freely. In the Vedic understanding, this is the pathway of awakening. The Nadi system is both deeply practical, literally the energetic underpinning of how your nervous system functions, how signals move, how you perceive and respond and regulate, and also profoundly spiritual, the architecture through which consciousness knows itself in a body. Now, I want to speak about something living at the heart of all of this, something weaving through the Nadi system, through the meridians, through everything we have explored today: Kundalini energy. You have probably heard the word before: yoga circles, spiritual communities, sometimes in fairly dramatic context. I want to bring it home in a way that actually makes sense of what it is and why it matters, including from a vortex healing perspective, because our understanding of it is quite specific and I think quite awesome. Kundalini is often described as a dormant spiritual energy at the base of the spine, coiled like a serpent, which is literally what the word means in Sanskrit. Once activated, it's said to lead to profound transformation, heightened consciousness, deepened connection to the divine. In Hinduism, Kundalini is understood as a form of divine feminine energy, Shakti, residing at the base of the spine in the Muladhara, the root chakra. Once awakened, it rises through the Sushumna, moving through each chakra in turn, with the progress through those chakras believed to mark different levels of awakening, until it finally reaches the crown, producing a profound transformation in consciousness. From a vortex healing perspective, when Kundalini blasts through the crown chakra, whether naturally or through intense spiritual practice, it can create what's called a samadhi state. I want to be very precise here because there is a lot of confusion around the word. Samadhi is not awakening, first of all. Samadhi is the temporary absorption of the ego into bliss. Genuinely extraordinary, I'm not dismissing it, but it has nothing to do with true spiritual awakening. In Samadhi, the ego merges into bliss. It does not disappear. That bliss state is what gets so many students hooked, almost addicted, because it's unlike anything else. But chasing Samadhi and genuine spiritual awakening are two very different journeys. But there is another layer here, though. When you merge with what happens on the Nadi level, when the Kundalini activates that system, it creates a bridge to divinity in the heart, a sense of divine grace, a quality of bliss far more profound than the nervous system Samadhi version. Let me know if you ever experienced that. I genuinely would love to know. So, that's one aspect of the Kundalini. But in vortex healing, we also understand it as something beyond the vehicle for spiritual experience. We view Kundalini, aside from its role opening the upper chakras and carrying divine energy, as a core physical energy in its own right. A soft, powerful energy feeding and strengthening the entire nervous system and the body, as well as all the chakras, which in turn energizes every organ and body system. So, when we talked earlier about organs holding emotion, about the energy system feeding the physical body, Kundalini is one of the fundamental sources for it. Here is how it moves. It travels up the core of the spine, then spreads through the system via more subtle channels, branching out from the main one, with finer pathways distributing it throughout the whole system. And this matters. When there are blocks in the Kundalini channel, the rising energy can't move cleanly upward. It gets forced sideways into those subtler channels, disrupting other body energies. This is what creates what people describe as bad Kundalini experiences, frightening, overwhelming, often arising through intense or forced practice where the energy feels completely out of control. It isn't the Kundalini itself that is dangerous, it's the block, the debris, those stuck up places that the energy encounters and can't move through. So it diverts somewhere where it was never meant to go, basically. In vortex healing, some practitioners, myself included, carry a transmission called Clearing the Kundalini Channel, designed specifically to clear those debris. We don't work directly with the Kundalini energy itself. The Kundalini will move on its own once the channel is clear. So we work on its channel, we create the conditions for the energy to flow. The energy has its own intelligence. The clearing work is intense. The debris can be extraordinarily dense and compacted, especially right at the base where your elbow is. It takes around 6 hours for a vortex healer with this specific transmission to fully clear your Kundalini channel. And about an hour or two of those needs to still be in person. However, even just 10 minutes in one session of Kundalini clearing, it's actually going to be so good for your energy system. But once the channel is clear, once the debris are gone, the Kundalini energy move up at its own pace, in its own intelligence, in its own timing. It rises gently, not suddenly, not overwhelmingly, not in a way that destabilizes the system. It simply can flow as it was always meant to. So, ultimately, an open Kundalini channel creates a stronger, healthier physical body, more energized and more relaxed at the same time. When that fundamental current flows freely, when it can do its job of feeding the nervous system, the organs, the chakras, the whole architecture we've explored today, everything works better. Everything is more nourished, more alive. Kundalini is to support your system. It's been there since the beginning, waiting, as tradition says, at the base of your spine. Something that already belongs to you. A coiled intelligence waiting for the channel to clear enough to rise. Before we close out this part, a few more pathways are worth a quick mention because the picture isn't quite complete without them. The fascia pathway system. So the fascia is the continuous web of connective tissue wrapping around every structure in your body, every muscle, every organ, nerve, bone, holding everything together as one seamless wall. Fascia is living, communicating tissue. It transmits informations, old tension patterns, stores the physical memory of every impact, embrace, and protective contraction. And it has its own energetic dimension, its own pathways. Some researchers now believe the Meridian system and the fascia network might be true description of the same underlying reality, one in the language of energy, one in the language of biology, that meridians might actually run along fascial planes, the body, as always, refusing to be neatly divided. The biochemical pathways, probably the most familiar to a Western mind, the chemistry of emotion moving through your bloodstream. Fear floods the system with cortisol through these pathways. Love and connection move oxytocin through them. Joy sends dopamine and serotonin along their routes. None of this is separate from the energy system. It's the energy system made visible under a microscope. Same conversation translated into the language of molecules. And finally, the interfacing pathways, which connect all of these systems to each other and to the wider energy system. There is one more place I want to take you. Somewhere you might not expect, into the very center of your bones. Zero balancing is a body-mind system developed by American physician and osteopath Dr. Fritz Smith in the 1970s, who began noticing something Western medicine had largely overlooked. The skeleton isn't simply a structural scaffold. Bone is alive, and at its core, in the marrow, there is a fundamental, foundational vibration. The zero balancing identifies as the densest, most grounded energy in the entire human system. In this understanding, bones are the deepest holders of energy in the body, deeper than muscles, deeper than organs, deeper even than fascia. And because they hold so deeply, they also hold what's oldest, the most ancient tensions, the most foundational patterns, sometimes carried across an entire lifetime, sometimes longer than that. The skeleton isn't background, not simply the frame the rest of the body hangs on. It's a primary energy system in its own right, with its own vibrational quality. That at the core, at the hardest, most seemingly solid part of you, there is still vibration, still life, all the way down. So, here we are. We have traveled through the organs and their emotional landscapes, through the meridians and their ancient rivers of chi, through the Jin Shin pathways and their 26 sacred locks, through the Nadis system and its luminous energetic nervous system, through the Kundalini channel, rising at the core of the spine, through the fascia and the biochemistry and the interfacing pathways, weaving it all together all the way down into the marrow of our bones. What I hope you are left with, more than any single piece of information, it's a felt sense of how extraordinary you are. Because none of what we have described today happens only to rare, spiritually advanced people. This is you, right now. 72,000 nadis humming, 12 meridians flowing, Kundalini waiting patiently at the base of your spine, your bones vibrating with their quiet, ancient intelligence, your organs holding the emotional story of your life with extraordinary loyalty and care. All of it is alive, all of it communicating, all of it, every layer in service of you. And maybe the most important thing I can leave you with is this: nothing in what we have talked about today is broken, even when it feels that way. And I understand sometimes it does. Even when something has been shut down so long, you have started to believe this is just who you are. What looks broken is actually the system doing exactly what it's always done, protecting you with whatever resource it has. A block is not a failure, it's frozen intelligence waiting until it's safe enough to move again. And those conditions can be created. That's what healing work actually is. Not fixing something wrong with you, restoring flow to something that was always at its core trying to be whole. Thank you so much for being here today, for giving this your time and your attention and your open heart. This conversation means everything to me, and I never take it for granted that you choose to spend this time here with me, exploring these depths together. Before I go, come find me at magicalmara.co.uk. Everything about the work I do, how to book a session, how to work with me directly, lives there. And while you're there, sign up to the mail list there because I've got something exciting coming up. I'll be running a special event series all about clearing the meridians and the meridians pathways, going deep into the channels we spoke about today, working with them directly, cleaning what's accumulated, restoring that flow. So head to magicalmara.co.uk, sign up, and I'll see you there. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Trust your body. Trust the intelligence running through you right now in ways you can't see and you don't have to understand, working on your behalf as it always has been. I will see you in the next episode with so much love. Be well, be good, and don't forget, you are magic. Ciao for now.